Only 8 national teams have won the World Cup. But if their best performance was winning the title, what was their worst campaign? So in this video, we'll see the worst World Cup appearance of each winner. The worst campaign made by Spain, England, France, all the way to Brazil. So let's start with a national team that had its worst campaign right when they were the defending champions, Spain.
One from David Villa, great finish!
After winning 2010, Spain arrived in 2014 as one of the biggest favorites, with several stars such as Iniesta, Xavi, Piqué, an amazing team. But the first group stage match was exactly against the team they defeated in the previous final, the Netherlands. So everyone expected it to be a balanced game, and that's how it started, with Xabi Alonso scoring the opener from a penalty. Then the Netherlands equalized with a stunning goal from Schneider, 1-1. But if everyone expected a balanced second half, the Netherlands demolished them.
Robben looking to reach and does. His second touch puts it in range. His third. With the cross. Oh, it's Bobby. Casillas has to hurry. Dispossessed. Van Persie. It's a four. Arjen Robben controls. Robben. Easy.
5-1, one of the biggest humiliations ever for Spain. Now since the group stage only has 3 matches, if they lost one more game, they were out, and the next opponent was Chile. Despite the heavy defeat, Spain was the clear favorite to win. But then...
A lovely ball from Sanchez, and there's Vargas! Alexis Sanchez, beaten out as far as Aranguis, who scores a second for Chile!
The Spanish fans were in shock. Against this team that was considered the best Spanish generation ever, Chile won 2-0. So with 2 losses in 2 games, the defending champions were eliminated. To compensate, they took out all their frustration on Australia in the 3rd match, but it didn't change anything. So with that, Spain finished the 2014 World Cup with their worst campaign ever. 2 defeats and finishing 23rd place. Is this the worst campaign of a World Cup winning team? Spoiler alert, no. Now let's move on to another country that also has one title, England, that won in 1966. But just like Spain, when they were expected to go far, in 2014 they had their biggest nightmare. Well, England arrived at the 2014 World Cup under pressure. They were coming from 2 painful eliminations in 2006 and 2010. So they were hungry for a victory with a team full of stars. Gerrard, Rooney, Lampard, but also many youngsters. Expectations were huge. But in the group stage they already started with bad luck, landing in a group of death with Uruguay and Italy, besides Costa Rica. So their first match was already a tough one, against Italy, a team that had Pirlo, Balotelli, Marchisio and many others. It was a strong team, so much so that in the first half...
Pirlo, lovely dummy, opens up the shot for Marchisio!
But England responded.
Stu, Rooney, only Sturridge in the middle, there he is, goal!
The game was now tied, anything could happen. But when the second half came, Balotelli showed up.
Space for the cross, and there's Balotelli!
By 2-1, England lost the first match. Now the pressure was even bigger, and the next opponent was Uruguay. It was all or nothing, but it started the worst way possible. In the first half, Suarez scored the opener, but in the second half, Rooney gave him hope.
Release it, has found Glenn Johnson. Glenn Johnson gets it across, should be a goal, it is! And it's Wayne Rooney!
Just one more goal and England would be safe. But in the 80th minute...
Organise a reshape here, and Suarez is in behind England. Suarez to win it! Suarez wins it surely!
2-1 for Uruguay, a huge blow for England. Now they would only have a chance to qualify if Italy defeated Costa Rica in the other match. With that happening, they would have a slight chance in the 3rd round. But oddly enough, Costa Rica defeated Italy, so England was officially eliminated. Then in the end, they still faced Costa Rica, but it ended in another disappointment, 0-0. With 2 defeats and 1 draw, England finished the 2014 World Cup in a humiliating 26th place, their worst campaign ever. Now after these countries that lifted the World Cup title once, let's raise the bar, going to the 2-time World Cup winners, where we find a team that has played in the final 4 times, France. France is always one of the favorites in the World Cup, but right after they won it in 1998, in 2002 their campaign was a nightmare. Even with Zidane and Henry, in 2002 they had one of the most shocking results ever. In a group with Uruguay, Denmark and Senegal, France didn't win a single game. It was 2 defeats and 1 draw, finishing 28th place. Believe it or not, it seemed impossible for France to have a worse campaign than that. But then 2010 arrived. France came to the 2010 World Cup as the current runner-up, so everyone expected them to go far. Cause even without Zidane, they still had names like Lloris, Diarra, Ribéry and Thierry Henry. But it ended as the worst year in French football. So France arrived at the World Cup, falling into a group with Uruguay, Mexico and South Africa. The first game was against Uruguay, but it was a bad match for both sides, finishing 0-0. At this point, they were not worried. They just had to defeat Mexico and South Africa. But the second match against Mexico shocked everyone.
Flag is down, chance here for Mexico, around Lloris, and it's the opening goal for Javier Hernandez. Now the referee, a big call, penalty, but it works.
2-0 for Mexico. The French couldn't believe what was happening. Now they were on the brink of elimination, but it still wasn't over. In the third match, if they thrashed South Africa, they would reach the round of 16 on goal difference. But then...
Shabalala. Noise and the header's in! South Africa lead! And here he is. Good crossing position. Poorly delivered. Not away conclusively though, and then Pella! 2-0 for South Africa!
France conceded 2 goals from South Africa. Then they pulled 1 back later, but the match finished 2-1 for the hosts. With another defeat, France was eliminated, finishing with their worst World Cup campaign ever. Finished bottom of the group and 29th place in the overall standings, even worse than the 28th place in 2002. So the manager was sacked. The situation was so serious that even the French government decided to intervene. The president himself scheduled a meeting with Henry to better understand what happened, believe it or not. And in that group, while France finished last, Uruguay came out on top. But Uruguay is the champion that has gone the longest without winning. Their last title was in 1950. Then it was in 1974 that they faced their first big humiliation. That year they lost 2-0 to the Netherlands, lost 3-0 to Sweden and drew with Bulgaria. Didn't win a single match and left the tournament in 13th place. But that World Cup only had 16 teams. So there was a World Cup where they finished in an even worse position. Almost 3 decades later, in 2002, Uruguay arrived with a renewed team. Forlan, Paulo Montero from Juventus and others. So they were placed in a group with Denmark, Senegal and France. But the tragedy started right in the first match. Against Denmark, they were managing to draw 1-1. But in the 83rd minute, 2-1 for Denmark. Now the second match was against France. It was very tough, but Uruguay got a big advantage. In the first half, Henry was sent off, but Uruguay still couldn't score. The match finished 0-0. However, there was still hope. If they thrashed Senegal, they would qualify, but that was not what happened.
Fadiga, goal! Poured at the top of the box, right-footed shot! What a goal! Duff. Unbelievable, it is now 3-0.
A real humiliation, but believe it or not, in the second half they recovered, scoring 3 goals. But the damage was already done. The match finished 3-3 and Uruguay was eliminated. So even though this campaign wasn't as bad as 1974, Uruguay had their worst finish ever, 26th place. Now continuing the list of World Cup winners, we arrive at a team that recently became a 3-time champion, Argentina. In 2022, Argentina lifted the trophy, but they started their campaign in a disastrous way.
An opportunity for Saudi Arabia. Oh, and that's a print!
However, with Messi, they saved themselves by winning the other matches. But there was a year they couldn't escape the elimination. Well, going back 2 decades, in the same year that Uruguay had their worst campaign, Argentina was also humiliated. But it was much more surprising than Uruguay, because Argentina arrived at the 2002 World Cup as one of the clear favorites. In the qualifiers, they had what was, at that point, the best campaign of any South American ever, with 13 wins in 18 matches. Managed by Marcelo Bielsa, Argentina had players like Pochettino, Zanetti, Batistuta, Verón, Simeone and many others. So they were the favorites to qualify from their group, that also had Sweden, England and Nigeria. Then in the first match, they lived up to the expectations, defeating Nigeria 1-0. It seemed like a matter of time for them to qualify. But in the following match against England...
Oh, it's a penalty! Beckham has scored for England!
Argentina conceded a goal and after that they couldn't equalize. By 1-0, Argentina was defeated. Argentina now had to win their last match against Sweden. Only a draw wasn't enough. But while they were still trying to get past the Swedish keeper,
Larsson runs over it. Svensson. Good strike! Oh, he's done it! It's the man from Southampton!
Sweden scored the opener. Now Argentina had scored 2. But by the time Crespo equalized, it already was in the 88th minute. So there wasn't enough time for another one. With a draw, Argentina finished 3rd in the group. So they were eliminated, finishing with their worst standing ever, 18th place. But before we head to the worst campaign ever made by Italy, Germany and Brazil, there was an even more humiliating campaign by Argentina. Back in 1958, when the World Cup only had 16 teams, Argentina also arrived as one of the favorites. But in their first match, they lost 3-1 to Germany. Then they managed to recover by defeating Northern Ireland. So everything would be decided in the final match against Czechoslovakia. But it turned out to be a humiliation so bad that it became known as the disaster of Sweden. They lost 6-1. They were thrashed, finishing their World Cup in 13th place. So just looking at the final standings, their worst was in 2002, but by results it was in 1958. Now after Argentina, let's climb up the step going to the 4-time winner Italy.
Italy are the champions!
The Italians became 4-time World Cup winners in 2006. But some of the players who lifted the trophy were also part of Italy's biggest humiliation. Well, after they won it in 2006, they arrived at the 2010 World Cup to defend their title with high expectations, featuring a squad that included Buffon, Chiellini, De Rossi, Cannavaro and many others. On paper, it was a powerful team, but the dream of becoming 5-time champions turned into a nightmare. Actually, when it started, everything seemed to be working in Italy's favor. Especially because they were placed in one of the easiest groups, with Paraguay, Slovakia and New Zealand. But since this video is about the worst World Cups, you can already guess what happened. Well, the first match was against Paraguay, but by halftime, everyone saw they might not be as strong as expected.
The good side of this, now they retreat. And the header's in! Paraguay in front!
1-0 for Paraguay. Then midway through the second half, Italy managed to equalize, but that was it. They ended the opening match in a draw, but there were still 2 more games against New Zealand and Slovakia, much weaker teams. So against New Zealand, the Europeans were expected to have an easy win, but right at the start, there was a surprise.
Curls it in. Corner touch in!
New Zealand scored the opener, believe it or not. But later, Italy pushed forward to win a penalty, which they scored. But after that, they couldn't do anything else. The defending champions drew with New Zealand. It was shocking. Now Italy was in more trouble than ever. In the last match against Slovakia, they were obligated to win. They couldn't afford another draw. But Slovakia was at the bottom of the group, so it shouldn't be that difficult. However,
Chiellini saw it coming. De Rossi gave it away. And it's rolled through for Vitek! Away by Pepe. Back in by Hamzik. Vitek!
Slovakia scored twice. Who could have imagined that? Then in the 81st minute, Italy pulled one back with Di Natale. So there was still hope and they kept pushing forward.
Away. Di Natale. Oh, 2-2! He's offside. The flag is up! The flag's up against Quagliarella!
Goal disallowed. And to make things even worse,
Aimed in for the substitute. Kopanek! He's done it!
yet another goal for Slovakia, sealing the deal for Italy. So even with a stunning goal from Quagliarella, it was too late. 3-2 for Slovakia and Italy was eliminated. For the first and only time ever, Italy left the World Cup without winning a single match. So finishing in 26th place, Italy made their worst campaign ever. That was unbelievable. Now after Italy, let's go to the country that has reached the World Cup final for the most times. Germany. Germany has won 4 World Cups and also finished as runner-up another 4 times. But even being so strong, they also faced humiliation. Way back in 1938, when the World Cup started straight in a round of 16, Germany lost to Switzerland, leaving without any wins. But that one started right in the knockout stage. So to see their true worst campaign, we have to go much further into the future, to 2018. In 2018, the Germans went to the World Cup with huge expectations. After all, they were the defending champions. In the previous one, they had humiliated Brazil 7-1 and defeated Messi's Argentina to win the trophy. So in 2018, they dreamed of their 5th star, going into the first match against Mexico as the clear favorites. But in the first half,
On Boateng, he's got support here from Lozano, cutting back inside, it's Lozano!
On a counter-attack, Mexico scored the opener, but Germany had Cruz, Ozil, Miller and many other stars. So they started dominating, but nothing got past the keeper. After 90 minutes, the match ended with a shocking result, 1-0 to Mexico. Now the pressure was huge for the next match, which was against Sweden, but again it started the worst way possible.
Klaassen, Toivonen, can he get it down? He's done it!
Sweden scored the opener, but Germany didn't want to repeat their mistakes, so in the second half they equalized. But a draw wasn't enough, they needed to win. However, it seemed far from happening, as Germany was reduced to 10 men with Boateng being sent off. A true nightmare for Germany. Until in stoppage time, this happened.
Need to earn a victory here. Kroos will go for it and score!
Germany turned it around, a historic win. So everything came down to the third match, where Germany had everything to qualify, because the next opponent was the already eliminated South Korea. So Germany went all in.
And Hummels! But Özil to play one in from Germany. Werner!
But even with over 70% ball possession, it just wouldn't get past the keeper. The pressure kept building, until in stoppage time, the unimaginable happened.
Flick towards the near post, bouncing around dangerously, and South Korea have scored! Neuer now is playing as a midfield. 2-0, that is it!
Germany collapsed, conceding 2 goals. 2-0 for South Korea, and for the first time in history, Germany was eliminated in the group stage. With 1 win and 2 defeats, Germany finished the 2018 World Cup in 22nd place. Something the German fans just wanna forget. So now, after all these countries, we reached the most successful national team in the World Cup, Brazil. When we think of Brazil going bad in the World Cup, the first thing that comes to mind is you know what.
They're queuing up. They're all going to score at this rate.
But despite losing 7-1 to Germany in 2014, they actually finished their World Cup in 4th place. So it wasn't their worst campaign overall. If we look at the worst final standing Brazil has ever had in a World Cup, it was in 1934, when the tournament started in the round of 16. In that year, Brazil faced Spain, but they lost that single game by 3-1, finishing 14th out of 16 teams. But Brazil only played 1 match. So to find out what was Brazil's worst campaign, we have to go some years into the future, to 1966. Having won the title in 1958 and 1962, the Brazilian team arrived as the reigning 2-time champion. So they came to 1966 with high expectations, featuring stars like Garrincha and the most famous of all, Pelé. It was a very strong team that was placed in a tough group with Bulgaria, Hungary and Portugal. Brazil was the favorite, so much that in the first match against Bulgaria, they won 2-0. But despite the win, Brazil suffered a big loss. Pelé got injured. The Bulgarians committed many fouls, ruling him out the next match. Now Brazil was gonna face Hungary without Pelé, and it was a tragedy. Brazil conceded a goal in the first 5 minutes. Then they managed to equalize. But in the second half,
in comes a lovely goal! 3-1!
Hungary defeated Brazil 3-1, being Brazil's first World Cup defeat in 12 years. A bad loss for the Brazilian team, which now needed to beat Portugal, led by Eusébio. But even with Pelé back on the pitch, it was a disaster.
By Eusébio. That was a good ball, is there? There's Torres. And another one!
2 goals from Portugal. Then in the 73rd minute, Brazil pulled 1 back. But at the 86th minute, Eusébio sealed the deal. By 3-1, Brazil was defeated once again, sealing their elimination in the group stage. The worst World Cup in Brazil's history, finishing 11th in the overall ranking. So if you enjoyed this video, I think you're gonna like this one too. So thank you and bye.